The theme of MIXX this year is Fueling Interactive Advertising's Creative Revolution. Why is creative and interactive advertising so important?
Well, I think creativity hasn't really changed. I think it's about coming up with concepts that break through all the clutter that's out there and are relevant to consumers. So I think the processes, all the different media channels, the platforms, the multiple devices that people use, those have all made it a much different process. But at the end of the day, it's really about coming up with a unique insight that's meaningful and connects with consumers.
Yeah, I mean, what distinguishes now from 20 years ago is just a complete fragmentation of the media landscape, and it's sort of so the opportunities, as Bob said, come from the same sort of creative source, but are they're just multiple. They're multiplied. So, as a creative person, it's more interesting, I think, because there are more sort of channels, more sort of behaviors that you have to line up your thinking with. But I think that another difference between now and say 10 years ago is that the creative process starts with what's the audience doing? What do they want?
Everyone's been talking about in recent years the changing roles of marketers, agencies, and media companies, and in many instances the merging of those roles. How has this change impacted your respective jobs?
Well, I think that the business has become so much more complicated. There's so many people now to bring into either a creative session to come up with ideas, and there's so many more people to be involved in the production process. I used to think back when I started that visual effects production would be one of the most complicated things to do, and now I think that the work that we do day in, day out with a combination of traditional and interactive and digital is much more complicated.
It demands a literacy, I think, across a lot of areas that we probably didn't have to worry about. Not only because 10 years ago you tended to be stuck in a silo, you're the designer, or you're in advertising, or you're in PR, and there wasn't much overlap between the thing, all those things. Now there's overlap and there's more discipline. So apart from your particular specialty, which the depth of your sort of aptitude, you need this sort of broad literacy across lots of things, so you know what to make and how to collaborate with the people you're making it with.
So this is a tough one, but what's the single most compelling trend in interactive media to each of you?
I think the one that's most compelling to me and to many in our agency is storytelling and what it means in new media. And I think number one, it's not about a 30-second idea. It could be a lot of linkable content. It could be something that's considerably longer. But I think coming up with stories that are relevant today is a new challenge, and particularly to interactive agencies that have been so good at providing more of a systematic approach to websites and banners and things like that.
I guess the thing that connects all of those things to the stories and the systems is data, and yep, I think that the more data that we have, the better for the audience, but also for the brands. It just makes things, useful things, more useful. It makes knowledge broader and deeper. You know, so all the things that we as consumers are looking for are sort of underpinned by data. And we're at this point now where all of the little sort of pools of data are starting to connect and create really sort of useful things on a mass scale. So I think that that's going to, you know, right now change a lot too.
What do you think the consumer wants?
Well, to sort of tie in with what Nick was just talking about, we are really surprised at how interested the consumers are with personal data. So that's become a very big deal. When we first launched Nike Plus, it was the integration of music and running, and we thought that was, it was a very good thing, and it's been successful. But what's even more important is the personal data that is captured, and how interesting that is to people to look at.
Yeah, I guess the other thing that people want is their sort of marketing to be contextual. So whereas there used to be a sort of templated approach to marketing where everything was delivered through a message in 30-second spots, depending on what it is you're interested in, the product or service might depend on what you want. So there might be times when entertainment is the right way to sell a message. There might be times when something that's more demonstrative or an application is more appropriate, depending on how, whether it's a high consideration thing or whether it's a technical thing. So I guess that's the main difference, and it's a hard thing for agencies to adjust to, which is to stop thinking in such a singular tactic, to adjust how you what people want depending on what it is that you're selling. Seems obvious, but it's sort of a new way of thinking, I think.
So with so much vying for your attention from a media perspective and just from a business perspective, how do you each prioritize and focus?
I think that we have a group of people that are really focused on the clients, and that helps a lot. It's the traditional account leads that manage them, and so they'll prioritize for me a lot of what I do day to day, calls that I make, fires you have to put out, people that you need to bring in. And then there's a larger group of executives that I think makes RGA such a strong agency, that have been with us for a long time, and they look at the near future and the future.
Yeah, I think for me right now, because we're going through this sort of transition, the most important thing is talent. So Bob's always said that the agency business is about real estate and talent. Bob's got the real estate covered. So I'm constantly on the lookout for not only the right talent but the right combinations of talents within the agency. So we need to be, if we're making different things, we need different aptitudes, and we need them working together. So it's all about talent. Yeah.
Why is creativity in interactive so important?
Well, I think that without it, it would be pretty boring. I mean, that's been a big problem with interactive work in the past. Is a lot of it is pretty tedious and boring and slow. What's happened now is the networks, the devices, let's say even mobile, has become so fast, and it's only going to get faster. I installed a Netflix into my sort of system at home, and it's downloaded, and it's very high quality, and you have their whole library. So you have so many things available today that makes sort of the creative things stick out.
Well, I think that as a company, RGA has always been very good at technology and creativity, sort of side by side, and blurring. So we have creative technologists and technical creative people. And this is dance between these two things. If the balance is off either way, then you get something that's either dry and boring, like Bob was saying, if it's just technical. And if it's just creative, then somehow it becomes frivolous, and not really working to sell something or to help people. It just becomes sort of fluff. So getting that balance right is important. And the other thing is that designing an agency is creative. And I think that Bob has been doing that for how many years now, Bob?
32.
32. So that I think the success of RGA has a lot to do with designing an organization too. That's creative. It's not something that there's a manual for.
That's great. Well, thank you both so
much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
That's great.